Ever bought ginger from the grocery store, tossed a piece in a pot, and watched it just sit there doing nothing for months? Maybe it eventually rotted, or it sprouted a little and then gave up. You are not alone. Growing ginger trips up a lot of gardeners, and usually it comes down to two things: growing the wrong variety or starting with the wrong rhizome. In this video, I am going to walk you through everything you need to know to grow ginger successfully, from picking the best variety for your garden to harvesting big, beautiful rhizomes at the end of the season. Plus, stick around to the end, because I am going to show you a simple way to keep your ginger harvest going year after year without ever buying another rhizome. Let us get started. Ginger is one of the most rewarding crops you can grow in your garden. There is nothing quite like pulling fresh ginger out of the ground and using it in your kitchen that same day. The flavor is so much brighter and more aromatic than anything you will find at the store. And the good news is that ginger is actually much easier to grow than most people think, once you understand a few key things. So let us start by understanding what ginger really needs to thrive. Now, before we get into planting, I want to make sure you understand a little bit about how ginger grows, because this will help everything else make sense. Ginger is a tropical plant that grows from an underground rhizome, which is that knobby root-like structure you see at the grocery store. It is not actually a root, it is a modified stem that grows horizontally underground and stores energy for the plant. From this rhizome, shoots emerge and grow upward, forming tall leafy stalks that can reach 3 to 4 feet in height. The plant uses those leaves to gather energy from the sun, and all that energy gets stored back down in the rhizome, which is the part we harvest and eat. Here is the key thing to understand. Ginger needs a long, warm growing season. We are talking about 8 to 10 months of frost-free conditions to produce a good harvest. That means if you live in zones 9 through 11, you can grow ginger outdoors year-round without much trouble. But even if you are in zones 7 or 8, or even cooler, you can absolutely grow ginger. You just need to start it indoors early, grow it in containers you can move, or treat it as an annual and harvest before your first frost. I have grown ginger successfully in Zone 8 for years, and I will show you exactly how I do it. Now let us talk about the most important decision you will make, and that is choosing the right variety of ginger to grow. This is where a lot of gardeners go wrong right from the start. When most people think of ginger, they think of the common ginger you find at the grocery store. That is Zinniber officinale, which is culinary ginger, the kind you use in cooking. But within that species, there are actually several different varieties, and they are not all created equal for the home gardener. On top of that, there are other types of ginger altogether, like galangal, turmeric, and various ornamental gingers. But today, I am focusing specifically on culinary ginger, because that is what most of you want to grow for your kitchen. The ginger you typically find at the supermarket is usually Chinese ginger, or what is sometimes called yellow ginger. It is grown commercially because it produces large rhizomes and ships well. But here is the problem. Commercial ginger is often treated with growth inhibitors to prevent it from sprouting on store shelves. That is why when you try to plant it, it just sits there. Even if it does eventually sprout, Chinese ginger tends to be more fibrous and less flavorful than other varieties. It is bred for yield and shelf life, not for flavor or ease of growing in a home garden. Now, the variety I recommend for home gardeners, and the one I grow myself, is called baby ginger, which is also known as young ginger or spring ginger. But let me be clear about something, because this confuses a lot of people. Baby ginger is not actually a different variety. It is regular ginger harvested early before the skin toughens up and the flesh gets fibrous. Any ginger variety can be harvested as baby ginger if you pick it young. The reason this matters is that baby ginger is milder, juicier, and far less fibrous than mature ginger, which makes it perfect for home use. But if you want to grow the best tasting ginger with the least amount of fuss, the variety I really recommend is called Hawaiian ginger, sometimes sold as edible ginger or simply as seed ginger from specialty suppliers. Hawaiian ginger has been selected over generations for flavor and growing performance in home gardens. It tends to sprout faster, grow more vigorously, and produce rhizomes with excellent flavor that is spicy but not harsh, with floral notes you just do not get from grocery store ginger. Another variety worth mentioning is called Bubba Blue Ginger. This one is prized for its blue-tinged skin and especially aromatic flavor. It is a bit harder to find, but if you can get your hands on it, it is absolutely worth growing. I have grown Bubba Blue for the past 3 seasons, and I can tell you the flavor is outstanding. It has more complexity than regular ginger, almost a hint of citrus in there. Now you might also come across something called galangal, which looks similar to ginger and is used in Thai cooking. Galangal is a different plant altogether. It is in the same family, but it has a sharper, more piney flavor and is used differently in the kitchen. If you enjoy Thai cuisine, galangal is worth growing, but it is not a substitute for regular ginger. So to sum up my variety recommendations, if you want the best results with the least hassle, look for Hawaiian ginger or seed ginger from a reputable nursery. If you want something special, try Bubba Blue. And if you are going to use grocery store ginger, at least buy organic because it is less likely to be treated with growth inhibitors. Now that you know which variety to grow, let us talk about where to actually get your ginger rhizomes, because this is just as important as picking the right variety. The number one mistake gardeners make is grabbing ginger from the grocery store and expecting it to grow. Like I mentioned, most commercial ginger has been treated with growth inhibitors. Even the organic stuff has often been stored in cold conditions for so long that it has gone dormant or lost viability. You can try it, and sometimes it works, but your success rate is going to be much lower. What I recommend instead is buying seed ginger from a reputable nursery or online supplier. When you buy seed ginger, you are getting rhizomes that were specifically grown and stored for planting. They have not been treated with inhibitors, they have been kept in proper conditions, and they are ready to grow. A few good sources I have used over the years include specialty tropical plant nurseries, online suppliers that focus on edible plants, and sometimes local plant sales or farmers markets in the spring. When you are selecting rhizomes, whether you are buying them or digging through a bin at the nursery, here is what to look for. You want firm, plump rhizomes that feel heavy for their size. The skin should be smooth and tight, not wrinkled or shriveled. Look for visible growth buds, which are those small pointed bumps or eyes on the surface. These are where the new shoots will emerge. The more eyes you see, the more shoots you will get. Avoid any rhizomes that are soft, mushy, moldy, or dried out. A healthy ginger rhizome should smell fresh and aromatic when you scratch the skin. One more tip on sourcing. If you know anyone who grows ginger, ask if you can get a few pieces from their harvest. Ginger that has been grown locally and recently harvested is often the most vigorous for replanting. I save pieces from my own harvest every year to replant the following season, and that ginger always outperforms anything I buy. All right, now we are getting to the fun part. You have got your ginger variety picked out, you have got your rhizomes, and now it is time to get them in the ground. Or in a container, which is actually how I prefer to grow ginger, and I will explain why. Ginger grows best in loose, rich, well-draining soil. Heavy clay soil is a problem because ginger rhizomes will rot if they sit in waterlogged conditions. Sandy soil drains too fast and does not hold enough moisture or nutrients. What you want is something in between. A nice, loamy soil amended with plenty of compost. If your garden soil is not ideal, that is one big reason to consider containers. You have complete control over the soil mix. For containers, I use a mix of about 60% high-quality potting mix and 40% compost. Some gardeners add a bit of perlite for extra drainage, which works well too. The container should be wide and shallow rather than tall and narrow because ginger rhizomes spread horizontally. A container that is at least 12 inches deep and 18 inches wide is a good starting point for 2 or 3 rhizome pieces. You can go bigger if you want a larger harvest. If you are planting in the ground, choose a spot with partial shade. Ginger does not like full, blazing sun all day. In the wild, it grows on the forest floor under the canopy of larger trees. Dappled light or morning sun with afternoon shade is ideal. Too much direct sun, especially in hot climates, will scorch the leaves and stress the plant. Before planting, I like to pre-soak my rhizomes overnight in room temperature water. This helps wake them up and rehydrates them if they have dried out at all during storage. Some gardeners soak them in a diluted seaweed solution for an extra boost, and I have had good results with that too. Now here is how to plant. If your rhizome is large, you can cut it into pieces, with each piece having at least 2 or 3 growth buds. Let the cut pieces dry for a day or two so the cuts callus over. This helps prevent rot. Plant each piece about 2 inches deep with the eyes facing up. Space multiple pieces about 8 inches apart to give them room to spread. Water the soil well after planting, then back off and keep it just lightly moist until you see green shoots emerge. Overwatering before the plant is actively growing is one of the fastest ways to rot your rhizomes. Once shoots appear, which usually takes 2 to 4 weeks depending on temperature, you can start watering more regularly. By the way, if you are finding this helpful, take a second to subscribe so you do not miss future videos. All right, let us keep going. Now let us talk about the growing conditions ginger needs once it is up and running. Temperature is huge. Ginger loves warmth. The ideal growing temperature is between 75 and 85 degrees Fahrenheit. Growth slows significantly below 70 degrees, and anything below 50 degrees can damage the plant. This is why ginger does so well as a summer crop, even in cooler climates. As long as you have warm summers, your ginger will grow. Just make sure to get it started indoors if your last frost date is late. I start my ginger indoors in late February or early March, about 8 to 10 weeks before my last frost date. I use a heat mat set to around 75 degrees to keep the soil warm, and that really speeds up sprouting. Once the weather warms up and nighttime temperatures are consistently above 55 degrees, I move my containers outside to a shaded spot on my patio. Humidity is another factor that matters more than most people realize. Ginger comes from tropical regions with high humidity, so it appreciates moisture in the air. If you are growing indoors or in a dry climate, misting the leaves occasionally can help. Outdoors, this is usually less of an issue, especially if you are growing in partial shade, where the air tends to stay a bit more humid. Watering is all about balance. Ginger likes consistently moist soil, but not soggy. I water my containers when the top inch of soil feels dry. During hot summer months, that might mean watering every other day. In cooler weather or cloudier conditions, it might be once or twice a week. The key is to never let the soil dry out completely, but also never let it stay waterlogged. If you are growing in the ground and your soil is heavy, consider building a raised bed to improve drainage. One thing I have learned over the years is to mulch heavily around my ginger plants. I use about 3 to 4 inches of straw or shredded leaves. This does a few important things. It keeps the soil moist so you do not have to water as often. It keeps the roots cool during hot spells. And it adds organic matter to the soil as it breaks down. Ginger really responds well to a thick layer of mulch, and I have noticed much bigger harvests in years when I am generous with it. Now let us talk about fertilizing, because ginger is a fairly heavy feeder and it needs consistent nutrition throughout the growing season. to produce big rhizomes. I fertilize my ginger every 2 to 3 weeks during the active growing season, which is basically from the time shoots emerge until late summer. For fertilizer, I use a balanced organic fertilizer or a fertilizer that is slightly higher in phosphorus. You want something like a 5-5-5 or a 4-6-4 ratio. Phosphorus supports root and rhizome development, which is exactly what we want. I also like to side dress with compost once or twice during the season. Around midsummer, I will pull back the mulch, add a layer of fresh compost around the base of the plants, and then put the mulch back on top. This gives the plants a slow-release boost of nutrients and keeps the soil biology active and healthy. One thing to avoid is over-fertilizing with nitrogen. Nitrogen promotes leafy green growth, which is great for the tops of the plants. But too much nitrogen means all that energy goes into the leaves instead of into the rhizomes. You will end up with a beautiful bushy plant and a disappointing harvest. So stick with balanced fertilizers and do not go overboard. If you notice your ginger leaves starting to yellow, but you are watering properly, that is often a sign of nutrient deficiency. Give the plant a dose of liquid fertilizer and see if it perks up over the next week or two. I like fish emulsion or liquid kelp for a quick nutrient boost. As your ginger grows through the summer, you really do not need to do much pruning or maintenance. The plant pretty much takes care of itself. Just keep up with watering, fertilizing, and maintaining that mulch layer. If you see any dead or yellowing leaves at the base of the plant, you can remove those to keep things tidy, but it is not strictly necessary. One more tip on ongoing care. If you are growing ginger in containers and we get a stretch of really hot weather, like above 95 degrees, I move my containers to a shadier spot. Extreme heat can stress the plants and slow down growth. The nice thing about containers is you have that flexibility to move them around as conditions change. Let us talk about some common problems you might run into and how to solve them, because even though ginger is relatively trouble-free, there are a few issues that can pop up. First, if your rhizomes are not sprouting, there are a few likely causes. The most common is that the soil is too cold. Ginger needs soil temperatures of at least 70 degrees to sprout reliably. If you planted too early in cold soil, the rhizomes may just be sitting there waiting for warmth, or they may have rotted. The other possibility is that you got rhizomes that were treated with growth inhibitors, or that had lost viability from poor storage. If nothing has sprouted after 6 weeks and the soil is warm, dig up a rhizome and check it. If it is mushy or smells bad, it has rotted, and you need to start over with fresh rhizomes. Second, if you see yellowing leaves, this could be a few different things. Overwatering is a common cause. Check the soil moisture. If it feels soggy, cut back on watering and make sure your drainage is adequate. Underwatering can also cause yellowing, especially if the edges of the leaves are turning brown and crispy. Nutrient deficiency, like I mentioned earlier, is another possibility, so give the plant a dose of fertilizer and see if it improves. Finally, some yellowing of lower leaves is completely normal as the plant matures, especially toward the end of the season. So do not panic if you see a few yellow leaves here and there. Third, if your ginger leaves are getting brown, scorched tips, this is almost always a sign of too much direct sun or not enough water. Move the plant to a shadier location if possible, and make sure you are watering consistently. Remember, ginger is a forest floor plant that evolved in dappled shade, not in full blazing sun. Fourth, root rot is a real concern with ginger, and it is almost always caused by overwatering or poor drainage. If you notice the plant wilting even though the soil is moist, or if you see a foul smell coming from the soil, root rot may be the problem. At that point, your best bet is to carefully dig up the plant, cut away any rotted portions of the rhizome, let the healthy parts dry and callus for a day, and replant in fresh, well-draining soil. Prevent this by never letting your ginger sit in waterlogged conditions. Fifth, pests are generally not a major problem with ginger, but you may occasionally see aphids, spider mites, or fungus gnats. Aphids and spider mites can be knocked off with a strong spray of water or treated with insecticidal soap if the infestation is bad. Fungus gnats usually show up when the soil surface stays too wet. Let the top of the soil dry out a bit between waterings, and they will go away on their own. In my experience, healthy ginger plants grown in good conditions rarely have serious pest problems. The good news is, if you follow the steps we have covered, from choosing good rhizomes to providing proper growing conditions, you should be able to avoid most of these issues. Ginger's really a low-maintenance crop once you get it established. Now let us get to the payoff, harvesting your ginger. This is the moment you have been waiting for all season. Ginger is ready to harvest when the leaves start to yellow and die back naturally, which usually happens in late fall, about 8 to 10 months after planting. For me in Zone 8, that is typically around October or November. When you see those leaves starting to fade and the stems begin to dry out, that is the plant telling you it is done putting energy into the rhizomes. Now here is the thing. You actually have two options for harvesting, depending on what you want. If you want baby ginger, which is that tender, juicy, mild ginger with thin skin, you can start harvesting as early as 4 to 6 months after planting. Just carefully dig around the edge of the plant and snap off a small piece of rhizome. The plant will keep growing, and you can harvest a little at a time throughout the season. Baby ginger does not store as long as mature ginger, but the flavor is incredible and the texture is so much more pleasant without all that fiber. If you want mature ginger for long-term storage or a bigger harvest, wait until the plant dies back fully. Then you can dig up the entire clump. For containers, this is easy. I just dump the whole container out onto a tarp and pick through the soil to find all the rhizomes. For in-ground planting, use a garden fork and dig carefully from the outside edges inward so you do not damage the rhizomes. When you pull up a healthy ginger plant, you will be amazed at how much the rhizomes have multiplied. A single small piece that you planted in spring can turn into a clump weighing a pound or more by fall. That is a really satisfying harvest, let me tell you. After harvesting, brush off the loose soil, but do not wash the rhizomes if you plan to store them. Moisture promotes mold. Let them dry in a shaded, well-ventilated area for a few days. Then you can store mature ginger in a cool, dark place for several weeks. For longer storage, you can freeze ginger whole or grated, or you can dry it and grind it into powder. Remember to save a few of your best, healthiest rhizomes for replanting next season. That brings me to my bonus tip. Now for that bonus tip I promised at the beginning, and this is something that has saved me money and given me better results year after year. Instead of buying new ginger rhizomes every spring, you can overwinter your ginger and keep it going indefinitely. Here is exactly how I do it. After harvesting in the fall, I select 3 or 4 of my best-looking rhizomes with plenty of healthy growth buds. I do not wash them. I let them dry for a few days, and then I store them in a paper bag filled with slightly damp peat moss or coconut coir. I put that bag in a cool, dark spot in my house where the temperature stays between 50 and 60 degrees. A basement or an unheated closet works well. Check on your stored rhizomes once a month. They should stay firm and plump. If the storage medium feels dry, mist it lightly with water. If any rhizomes are getting soft or moldy, remove them immediately so they do not spoil the others. In late winter, around February, bring your stored rhizomes out to a warm spot and start the planting process all over again. Because these rhizomes came from your own garden, they are already adapted to your conditions, and they tend to sprout faster and grow more vigorously than store-bought ginger. I have been doing this for 5 years now, and I have not bought ginger rhizomes since that first season. My plants just get better every year. It is incredibly satisfying to have a self-sustaining supply of fresh ginger right in your backyard. So that is everything you need to know about growing ginger at home, from choosing the best variety to harvesting and saving rhizomes for next year. If you found this helpful, make sure to subscribe and hit that bell icon so you do not miss my next video. And if you have any questions or want to share your own ginger growing tips, drop them in the comments below. I always love hearing from you. Thanks so much for watching. Growing your own ginger is one of those things that feels a little exotic and special. But once you try it, you will wonder why you did not start sooner. Get some good rhizomes, give them warmth and shade and water, and before you know it, you will have more fresh ginger than you know what to do with. Happy gardening, and I will see you in the next one.